What's up, everybody? Shawn here with another Live to Roll live. This week we are back talking about getting some free money, grants, fundraising, all that stuff. We got our friend Ryan here, so we'll get into some intros with you guys. Like I said, my name is Shawn. I'm a C5, C6 quadriplegic from a snowboarding accident 18, little over 18 years ago. Tom, go ahead, buddy.
What's up, everybody? It's your boy, Tom. If you don't know me, I'm Tom Conaway. I'm from Southern California. I'm a C6B quadriplegic. I've been paralyzed for, 25 years, quarter of a century. And yeah, we're here to, everybody likes free stuff. Turns out if you have a chronic condition, it's considered, under the veil of general disabilities, there's a lot of free grants and stuff available for us that a lot of people can apply for, maybe don't even realize they can. So we're excited to talk about that fun stuff today. Bobby, you want to introduce yourself?
Not a problem, but who doesn't know you, Tom? Hey, what's up, everyone? My name is Bobby Rohan. I'm a C5-6 quadriplegic, Asia A through D, I think. No, I don't even know what my Asia scale is. I was hurt 33 years ago from a cycling accident. Enough about the three of us bozos. Let's move it over to the one that actually has the brains in the house today, Ryan Bush. Take it away,
Yes,
Ryan.
sir.
Hey guys, my name's Ryan. I'm a C4 5'6", spinal cord injury. I got hurt about 6 years ago in a car accident, and yeah, I'm excited to be here.
And
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for
Ryan,
joining us, Ryan.
we're super excited to have you, man. Ryan's a big member of our SCI community down here in Southern California, and a really amazing, awesome, cool, positive example of some guy who's done really, really incredible in his rehabilitation and recovery. Because you're moving and shaking, man. You're driving, you're working, you're out and about, you're living life, and it's really amazing, dude. It's very
And
inspiring,
tell
even
tell
for
everybody what you
someone like
do
myself.
as a job as well, Ryan, because I think it's pretty freaking cool, actually.
Yeah, so I teach sailing to the able-bodied community. So I teach, like
Right.
sailboats, little boats with sails, and I love doing it. It's really fun, and it's a cool job.
Yeah, that's so
So,
awesome, dude. Like, yeah, it's super cool, man. And
so
yeah,
Ryan
Ryan,
is.
we
I'm sorry. Go
Go
ahead,
ahead,
John.
Bobby.
I was gonna say we've just been friends with Ryan a long time, part of Triumph and everything. And yeah, just been a while, just been too long for not having him on the show. So yeah, thanks for joining, dude.
No, I
What
was
were you
going to
saying,
say,
Bob?
Ryan, is your job do this, do that? No, 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 no. Don't do that. Oh, okay, you got it. All right. No, 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 no. Don't do that. Yeah, okay, you're doing that.
You got it. A lot of coaching, a lot of teaching. Yep, you got it.
Well, it was kind of what you were involved in before you got injured, correct? Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. So I did it before, so it translated really easily to doing it after, and it just kind of modifying your skills to less hands-on and more knowing how to tell people how to do things. It takes a little bit more brain power when you can't touch things. You gotta know how to explain it really well, and I think
Yeah.
that comes into caregiving too a lot when you're trying to tell somebody, up, down, left, right. You gotta see it from all angles to get it right. So when you're teaching somebody how to tie knots, you got to be able to say it 10 different ways so that they can see it the way that you're explaining it.
I feel like that would be
Okay.
really difficult to explain how to tie a knot without being able to show how to tie the knot.
Yep,
But
it's
that's awesome, man.
Ryan, also tell us a little bit about your background before you're injured. I think it's, you and I knew each other for, I don't know, 2.5 years. And then all of a sudden I was with your dad one day and he's just like, oh, yeah. And did he tell you he's like almost a professional saxophone player? And I'm like, what? He's like, told me all these other stories, but tell a
We
little
got
bit
a
about your
we got a
background.
sax man in the building. Get out
We
of
got
here.
a sax man
we
and a
do, we
guy who,
do. Yeah.
toured bikes. And tell us a little bit about your background before you got hurt.
Yeah, I lived a very fortunate life. I got to work in the outdoors industry, so I taught sailing, I taught skiing and snowboarding. I took people on bike tours. got to travel a lot and do a lot of fun things, and fortunately got paid to do it, which was really cool. And yeah, it was a really fun way to make some money and live life, and still can do a little bit of that nowadays, which is awesome.
Yeah, dude, that's awesome.
So shout out Peter. He just got his annual assessment at the VA and T7 para. Um, so I mean, Ryan, you're the only one that's got like your Asia test probably like done semi recently in terms of like specifying your level and level of function. But I'm kind of curious, like when it comes to your work, sailing and stuff. And we're gonna get into like other adaptive like sports equipment things like that. But what kind of adaptation like have you made in the workplace to make it accessible? Are you actually on the sailboat? Are you like on a boat that's docked and just like explaining the mechanics of it, or are you like on the boat in the water? Like,
Yeah, so it's a able-bodied program. So I'm not on the boat in the water. What I'm
okay,
doing is we've got a classroom and we've got a dock, and it's a lot of that type of instruction. So it's drawing stuff on whiteboards, and then it's a lot of practical hands-on on the dock, and then you send them off, and then that's where some of my other coworkers are on boats out there in the water, doing that portion of the teaching. But
That's
in the
amazing, dude.
workplace, I haven't made any adaptations, which is kind of weird. It kind of just worked out that there was a way for me to, do my job that didn't need any modifications. Um, but they definitely are important for other jobs and doing other
Yeah.
things.
Yeah, well, in the vein of sailing still, like, do you get out on the water, like in a sailboat?
Yeah, so there's a program down in San Diego called the Challenge Sailors of San Diego, I think, and that's the program I've been able to get out on the water and actually sail with, and that's really fun. It's a bit of a drive, but it's a cool program, and they've got a lot of great stuff going on.
Yeah,
that's
that's pretty
cool.
amazing. I got to go on a sailboat with USARC at their land meet sea camp that they held a couple years ago, which was like a really cool opportunity to go out into like the Long Beach like you know bay or whatever, the ocean a little bit too. I think we cruised out with a little marina there, and yeah, it was crazy. It's fun. It's a different kind of moving through the water, that's for sure.
Yep. So that program's adjacent to the one that I teach at. So
Okay,
USARC is the U.S. Adaptive Sailing or U.S. Sailing
adaptive.
Center is just right next door. So I
Okay.
can see them from outside of the building that I work at.
Oh, amazing. Yeah. And for anybody that isn't super familiar, USARC is the United States Adaptive Recreation. Um, and I'm getting that right, correct? And
Yeah.
they have chapters all over the U.S. In the vein of trying to enable individuals to get out and get active in all kinds of cool things like skiing, water sports, snow sports, like a lot of action sports, like skiing, water skiing, stuff like that. And I've been very thankful and lucky to have the opportunity to take advantage of a little bit of that down here in Southern California. It's actually, they try to make it as affordable as possible. You do have to pay a little bit, but they do have sponsorship programs as well because they do a lot of. They realize, a lot of people need help. They do a lot of trips, sponsored trips, and things like that. And it's really just a matter of kind of getting in touch with them, letting them know your situation, that you want to get out, and really kind of regardless of your level of disability, we usually have a way to accommodate you. It's really amazing. I've seen some really, really like high level quads and stuff, like skiing, water skiing, and jet skiing and
Yeah.
stuff. And you didn't really realize it was possible.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, man. That's all those programs. I love you, Sark. And let's use that to transition to our topic today for scholarships, fundraising, all that stuff.
I do
So,
want to
because
shout
some of
out
those,
like Darren in the chat,
yeah, I
Peter,
did.
Andrew, Steve. Thanks everybody for joining us. If anybody has gotten any kind of grants before in the past, let us know in the chat who you got it through, what kind of um, funding solutions you found, if you've had to rely on any for anything, if it came to like athletic equipment, just medical expenses, just general grants, things like that. Let us know.
Yeah, definitely. Any info is helpful for everyone.
Well, we
So
just
yeah,
have like a pretty broad audience, so like some of our stuff I feel like can be a little, I don't know, we try to like shout out all the national programs and even international ones, but still it can be tough. We're always trying to learn too, so anything
well,
you
that's
guys can help share, yeah.
You
and
know,
you
and
really
the,
do have to do your own research. If you're in your area, looking for your local resources and stuff.
Well, there's so many
Because
local resources like outside of the national resources. Oftentimes, local resources can even be in like more availability and abundance. If you can just find them, that can be the tricky part. But we can talk a little bit more about that.
and I know
Um,
the biggest thing is, where to go find them and how to find it and getting it tailored to you. And obviously, everything costs more than what you really want or need to begin with. So a lot of times you're like looking at, hey, I want a hand cycle. Well, a hand cycle, can be anywhere from 6,000, 10,000 to 20,000, and you're finding all these grants, and they're like, oh yeah, we'll support that for 3,000 or support that for 5,000, and you get short. But at least it's a start. And the biggest thing is trying to find that start. And where I've always had um, success in finding good resources for grants is finding bigger websites that have a category that says grants. So you're finding you're going on to Christopher Reeves Foundation, you're going to carecare.com, and you're trying to find out these grants. That's where I kind of start. And in
yeah,
fact, I found a good one today off spinalcord.com, and they have the grants for that. And it's just like, oh, there we go. And the list is pretty long, and I'm looking at 20 of them right here in front of me.
yeah. Now, when we say free money, like pardon the clickbaity title, we're trying to, just get as many clicks as we can on these videos. But it's free in the sense that it's available if you apply for it. You gotta verify, generally like verify you're like actually disabled. Prove that you have a disability from like a letter from your doctor or something, and then you gotta plead your case. And usually, like the style of writing a letter or applying in some way and just having to like write why you're requesting this money, why you need it, why, how it would help you in your life. And that's where the work does come in. So it's free in the sense that, anybody can apply and it's free if they'll give it to you. But, you do have to do some work in not only researching, finding which grants you apply for, because there's tons of ones that are just specific to individuals with spinal cord injuries, individuals with other varying types of disabilities, be it different kinds of physical disabilities, mental disabilities, or otherwise. And then figuring out, narrowing down, which ones you could apply for, and then kind of coming up with, prompts like a letter that, you can use, like maybe modify in small ways and apply to a bunch of different ones. And you'd be kind of surprised how many are available. I mean, just on spinalcord.com, like there's, like 20 like listed just specific for spinal cord injuries. But just like we said, if you go to Christopher Reeves Foundation, if you go to other big resource websites like CareCure, New Mobility, things like that, they will have lots of directories and resources specifically for this kind of stuff. So Ryan, let's chat up our guest. So while we got him here with us, what kind of grants have you received since you've been disabled? I know that Derek mentioned the Kelly Brush Foundation. He's waiting to hear back from them to see if he's going to be able to get an assisted hand cycle. But the other one that we want to talk to you about, we've talked about, is like CAF, which is the Challenge Athletes Foundation as well. And they do tons of grants for athletic equipment.
Yeah, I have not received anything from those two, but I did.
Okay.
I've gone skiing twice. So I went with the High Fives Foundation. I went up to Tahoe and got a grant to go skiing. And what that covered was the lesson and the equipment. When you go skiing and you've never been sit skiing before, you're going to need a sit ski to be in. And you're going to need a lift ticket, and you're going to need somebody who's helping you. So I call it a guide, but instructor. That's the word I was looking for. You need an instructor with you. And so that's what the grant covered. Was I went skiing for 5 days, and they covered that part of the skiing. And I think what you're saying, Tom, is really important when it comes to grants. Is that it's not just free money. It's you've got to be really intentional and be pleading your case and showing why you're a good candidate for this money, because these organizations have a pool and they've got people applying and they've got to make selections. And
Yeah.
sometimes the criteria that they put out is um, you have a spinal cord injury or paralysis or disabled, but then they start cutting it back from, you're showing the reasons why you'd benefit from it, or why you have an interest in it, or why it would benefit you. So those are all really important parts to it.
Yeah, well, like a lot of times it's just limited grants available, limited equipment available, to donate or, purchase for donations. And they just want to ensure that whoever's getting it, has an intention to use it, utilize it in a meaningful way. It's not like meant to, just be nitpicky. And, like if they could give one to everybody, whether they use it once a week or once a month or once a year, like I think they would. But, like just considering the nature of these things, it's, they just want to make sure it goes to someone who's excited and is going to not only be able to use it, but have the intention and the motivation to get out and utilize it as much as they can.
Yep. Yeah. So the setting goals and things like that really helps with that. So if your goal is to go hand cycling, and a precursor to that is you get involved with an organization. So like by me, there's Ramp It Up. They go hand cycling once a month, and you can go and demo that before, and that's a good way to show like, hey, I have an interest. I really liked enjoying this, and I'd love to have one for myself. And as Bobby said, hand cycles are not cheap. They're not like going to Dick's Sporting Goods to go get a bicycle for $100. The hand cycles are really specialized equipment, and they're really, really expensive.
And
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, they get up in cost because a lot of us, the four of us here, with being at our level with the quadriplegic, and like Darren, I think was saying, I'm the quadriplegic with my arm movement but no fingers. And so what do you need? A little bit of assistance. So then you're talking about a little bit of a motor with batteries. Now you're talking, instead of the cheap end, top end hand cycle can go for what, 2,200. Now you're talking about 8 grand, 10 grand.
Yeah, and part of that is hand cycles are really freaking heavy. It's not like a bicycle that
Yeah.
weighs 20 pounds. They're upwards of 100 pounds, and then you've got a quad with limited arm strength trying to move that thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
And
I have trouble. I would consider myself a pretty strong quad for like my level. And like anytime we hit incline, I'm stuck like on the hand cycles. Like and I even when I try to change the gear and stuff and gear down, it's not like I'll usually need to get pushed up sections of area like depending on where we are. Like when we go to the Lake Castaic hand cycling for Triumph, I can't do that course at all hardly. Like I need somebody to follow me the whole time and like have to continuously like give me boosts up areas because I just can't make like it's just too hard because there's no power, there's no motors or anything on the Triumph cycles. You just got volunteers.
Yep.
I always feel like it looks like I'm like sitting here sleeping when I'm like trying to read the chat off to the side. So sorry if I'm getting a little squinty, you guys. I got some new glasses coming in a week or two, so it should be good to go. Hopefully by November. But we have a
Hey,
couple awesome comments that I
Tom,
did want to
Tom,
touch
let
on.
me
Yeah,
let me give you just a real quick and a side
yeah,
note because you just segued into glasses and contacts for those people with, as I just said, four of us are quad. So sometimes glasses and contacts are not the easiest things to either manage and keep clean or manage and keep straight. Like my glasses are always crooked because
mhm,
either, just the way I take them off my face or it's, sometimes contacts are great. So there have been out there grants for those who can get LASIK um, surgeries. That there's doctors out there that just finally say, you know what, I made so much money in this business, and now it's pretty cheap. I'm going to give a grant, and for anybody who doesn't have hand function and wants LASIK. And I, used to have a doctor I knew about. in LA and would send all my friends there that were always asking about it. They never had to pay a cent.
Yeah.
And looking on that spinalcord.org, there is even a Mallory Vision Institute provides grants to spinal cord injury victims who injuries interfere with their ability to put on glasses and contacts. So grants are out there. It's a wide range from, yeah, a lot of times we think about that sports equipment, getting out there, and there's a lot of those grants out there. Challenge Athletes, High Five, um, Kelly Brush, the Travis Roy Foundation. There's a ton of them out there. But then you can
And
get down to for school, classes, other things.
That's,
They're out there.
actually, in the
so
chat, that's what Peter had asked if we knew any grants to get a car. He's trying to regain mobility and self reliance.
Now you're getting
I
it. Now you get into the hard one.
The
I
harder one.
I applied for some grants. So back when I was like in more pursuit of a vehicle for like my independence, I'm very fortunate here in Southern California to have access to programs like Access, which is like a transportation program here in Southern California. Accessible Ubers like now, which are like really awesome. If they cost a little bit more, they're like readily available, and like other means of public transportation. So honestly, driving scares the crap out of me. Highways are scary. I'm not so much in the pursuit anymore, but I was for a long time, especially when I was first trying to move out. And I applied for some grants for a vehicle and vehicle modifications. I applied for like just a modified vehicle. There were some programs that I found online. I think I ended up applying to like 4 or 5 different grants, and I didn't get awarded any of them. But that is the nature of it. Whether or not my application, is just like sufficient, applicable or whatever. They just had too many, someone mentioned in the chat vocational rehabilitation. At least here in Southern California, it's called the Department of Rehabilitation, and it's a state-ran program that does vocational rehab. They assist you in getting you back to work, whatever form that may be, by providing you a means through your education, access to your education. And I've known several people, Andrew Skinner for one, I know, and a few other people here in Northridge that have gotten vehicles through Department of Rehab in order for them to get back and forth to school, get back and forth to work. Like that was what they needed to be accessible, just like you described, Peter. And there was a program that provided funding for even something like that. $50,000 car, modified, fully brand new. I don't know what it's like in your state because I know the Department of Rehab isn't like a federal program. It's a state-ran program here
Yeah,
in
state.
California. The VA may have something in that regard. If not, your state might have a similar program. I think Steve said it in the chat. It's a vocational rehab. I would maybe do a little bit of research, or if you need any help in that regard, please feel free to reach out. I can help do some research for you too. And the other thing we're kind of talking about today is programs that help with funding, which is kind of a part of fundraising. Fundraising can be a whole, all-encompassing episode, and like general raising money, just generally for cost of living, medical expenses, everything we've talked about, kind of all wrapped up into one. It can be hard. Fundraising is not an easy thing. It's kind of a learned thing. A program, a nonprofit that we've had on here featured before, that are like good friends of Live to Roll, is Help Hope Live.
Oh, yeah.
They again are, I think, just a national program. So I'm sorry for the international folks across the
Yeah.
pond. They may be able to direct you to some international resources, but again, I cannot speak on that like 100%.
I
Like I don't
think
know for
we
sure.
I think when she was on, they somebody asked about that, and there are some programs I think out there, but I'm not sure. Yeah, if there's anything exactly like that, but there
Um,
there's resources though. So
yeah, there's they're a program that helps tackle a lot of the kind of stuff we're talking about. They will help set up fundraising campaigns for you, give you access to those resources in order to like help, you figure out how to facilitate more effective fundraising, and then help get you in touch with programs like everything we're talking about today, and organize, grants and things like that. They have professional grant writers, they have resources for grant writing, they have the tools and the, whole, like, people, it's their job to just help you facilitate more meaningful funding and fundraising for yourself. So shout out Help Hope Live. We can link their information too, but we just had
And
particularly like
they're
Andrew in the chat talking about general fundraising, and I know you're over in the UK, bro, and Andrew's a regular in our chat. We're always sending you positive vibes and love, dude. Hope you're doing okay wherever you're at, whatever you're doing, and we appreciate you joining always.
yeah.
Darren said he
And,
traded his Harley for a van. They went on 7,000 before it was all set up for quadriplegics. Well, I don't know too many quads that ride bikes. So
I
I
know
don't
one
know.
Aaron Baker, but he's not exactly a quad. He's pretty high functioning
Hey,
though.
hey, 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 he's a quad.
He is. No, he is. He is. Technical. Aaron's a. But yeah,
We see, that's the other thing grants are typically for. It's not so much, I mean, it can be for fun stuff, like especially like adaptive recreation equipment, things like hand cycles, stuff like what we talked about. There's lots and lots of programs in that regard, just because there's lots of, you know, awesome athletes and people in fortunate positions that want to bring more people to activities like that. Fun stuff like motorcycles and things like that. I don't know. There may very well be programs out for it when it comes to, especially applying for like vehicle grants and things like that. You're probably gonna get end up with like a standard, Honda wheelchair van, something like that. They kind of tend to go more towards functional and utilitarian versus like style and like looking pretty cool and fast.
And I think when you think of the cars and the motorcycles and the that vehicle stuff, now you're getting into the well over 20,000. I think 20,000 and way above that range. And I think you're more thinking about you're going to GoFundMe or you're doing a personal fundraiser for yourself by, reaching out to friends that might know people, the GoFundMe's, something that, a lot of people, kind of forget, but almost in every community, I don't know if they're international. I would imagine they are, but Rotary clubs. So getting to know somebody in a Rotary club is huge. And my
Yeah.
brother is part of one. And like, I'm like, hey, what's up with your Rotary club this year? And he's like, they always have a big ride for cancer and another something for a community project. But then they always have an individual one. They find an individual one, or it's usually somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody, and they want to do a quick $10,000 fundraiser. I mean, that's what Rotary clubs do. They get together, they network, but then they also do a lot of fundraising. And so it's something to tap into in your local areas. And, even though when you can't find that perfect grant out there, that's where you're going to have to start using your, little head and getting on. And we were talking about, I think I deleted my Facebook account, but I know I've did just fundraising for a nonprofit that I worked for by just saying, hey, I want my birthday money to go to this nonprofit, and raised, like $8,000.
Yeah.
yeah. People do that for like Triumph and different nonprofits all the time on Facebook. It's a great fundraising um,
Matthew said
tool.
high fives tonight him.
I
He
know.
was a
I was
pro
actually gonna say.
snowboarder. They said
So
he wasn't athletic enough.
Ryan, you did the high five. Does that seem like it's weird? Like he wasn't athletic enough? That just seemed crazy to me. Or
I've
Well,
never
we
applied for high
don't
five, but
entirely know the context. Like Matthew, if you want to share your like level
yeah,
of injury, don't like feel pressure to, if it's like you want to keep that to yourself. But, um, yeah, I don't know. Like I've seen some high level quads do just about every adaptive rec activity, um, and again, like I don't know your level of function or athleticism, but if yeah, I don't know how high five works. I don't know how their board gives out their stuff. Like they maybe just thought that there may be individuals that might be able to utilize it easier. I don't know. It kind of depends on your application and stuff too. Like, there's a lot of little nuances. I would say, we talked about it. Like Bobby, we were just talking about it this the other day. I think yesterday, is if you do not like get a grant, or like the first time around, that doesn't mean you can't apply for it again the second time. Maybe modify your approach. Maybe spend a little bit more time on the application. Add a little bit more information about yourself. If that's like, if you're able to, maybe like share your grant letter, your application with someone who has some experience doing that, or just like someone who might be able to like give you some tips and tricks. Again, like I could even like review something like that for anybody that would like want to share it, keep everything private. Just like give my opinion in terms of like how I think like the efficacy of the application would be. But those are just some tips and tricks you could do on taking another shot at it. And just because you didn't get it the first time, I know it can be discouraging, but don't let it discourage you from applying again, because it may just very well have come down to there wasn't as much funding available that particular year. They couldn't give out as many. They had to be more choosy. And this next year, they got, more funding. They got more, donations, whatever. And because you applied again, it also shows that you have a want for it. You're eager to, get something like this, to be able to utilize it. And they do pay attention to things like that as well. So again, like I wouldn't let it be too discouraging, although I know how it feels. Like I know it can be very discouraging. And these things are unfortunately very slow processes too. It can be like, you apply and you wait months and you aren't sure you hear back, or, you're just kind of in limbo. And that's where, grants are a little bit different than,
Well, let me say this, Tom,
yeah,
as somebody, I do work on a board of a foundation, Triumph Foundation, and we do approve the grants. And the number one thing when I'm sitting there looking at the grant and we're all around the table ready to, either deny or approve, or most of the time I'm just saying, send it back. It's incomplete. They didn't put their picture in there. They only gave us one quote where we asked for three quotes. And if you only have one quote, and there are some places that will only do one quote, maybe in your area, explain that, so we don't have to dig and sit there and figure like a missing piece of a puzzle going, okay, then they didn't put their income, then they didn't put you have to really do your research and put in a nice good letter, then get a couple reference letters if that's what it asks. There's just so many times I'm just looking at this, I'm like, I, you know and especially when we have out of state grants, because I know a lot of people in state, or one of us on the board knows some are people in state, but out of state, I'm like, I don't know his environment. They didn't put a picture of his environment or the house because they're asking for a ramp. So a lot of times, make sure you do diligence on that application. That is, foremost, to go for. And if you get denied, ask, why did I get denied and how can I reapply? One thing that the Voc Rehab, when you were talking about vans,
yeah,
Tom, Ray Pizarro, our good buddy from Push Rim, he, said that Voc Rehab will automatically deny you the first time you try to apply for a vehicle. Just straight out deny you. And then you have to go ahead and reapply. And then you got to talk with them and meet with them. And he said, his time when he went through the van, he got denied, and then he got
yeah.
denied again, and then he just kept at it until they finally did it for him.
I mean, that's, yeah,
Yeah.
that's really kind of what it comes down to, is like try again. I've applied for certain things in the past too, but denied initially, and then like just through reapplying and like better justifying my case, like received whatever I was like applying for. I did like see in the comments earlier too, some people mentioned like funding or fundraising grants for like rent, medical expenses, things like that. I don't know. There might be some grants available for things like stem cells, things like that, very far and few between. Probably just because, at least here in the U.S., it's still not, like a very, broad treated thing. And stuff like rent, it's just, there are maybe grant programs stuff out there for it. It's not something to rely on, especially for an essential service like rent. It's like where you want to look towards social services and seek out social services, whatever they might be in your area that can, more immediately kind of assist you. Because like when it comes to stuff like that, like grants again are not necessarily like a reliable form of like income. It's not like something like that. This is free money that's available for things out there that is allocated and needs to be spent in a certain way, and you might be able to get a piece of the pie if you apply for it. But social services are a very different thing, and I do want to do an episode specifically talking about social services because it definitely seems like it might be applicable to some individuals in our audience. But as like a recipient of certain social services myself, those are a whole different ballgame. And I would say, like, if you are in a situation where you are needing assistance with rent, medical expenses, any kind of essential living, you want to seek out whatever social services might be available to you, before seeking out any kind of grant or
Yeah,
anything like
and
that,
Brent,
because it's just not reliable when it comes to that. And everybody has human rights to, a roof over their head and medical services and, things like that. So seek out the services and find them.
and rent is very hard because a lot of times when we see something for rent, we're like, well, what about the next month? What about the
Yeah.
month after? So a lot of times if you are looking for something like a rent, one time with another organization I was with, we did pay for it because they had a huge expense because of their daughter being in an accident and
Yeah.
had a big copay for. And they're just like, we paid for the copay, but now we're short on rent. This is a one-time thing. As you can see, we've never missed a rent payment, so we did pay their rent.
Yeah.
The-
So you got to show something like that, but for a daily basis, it's pretty hard. And then also for like someone who says, I don't have insurance for my catheters that I really want. It's like, yeah, but 1 month of catheters, you know how much that costs. So it's like you might have to find something else, and because not everybody can just get different insurance, but it's like, yeah, it's what are you going to do after the funding runs out?
Yeah.
And it's because there's a lot out there.
Well, I mean, the grants that I am like pretty familiar with too. It's like we always talk about the Triumph Foundation. They do a lot of like home modification grants for individuals coming out of rehab. Maybe like a more immediate thing. They're going to a home that's not accessible because they have a few steps and need a ramp installed, or like someone's talking about an accessible bathroom. They're trying to seek out through like a state program in North Dakota. And it's difficult. I feel for you, man. Like I done my fair share of like bed baths and baths in rooms that were not the bathroom too, and I really feel for you because it can be super super hard. Like my only um like thing I can say is just like keep encouraging you to like pursue and stay after whatever that program is. Just seek out the contractors, like call everybody in the phone book and find someone, get some quotes, whatever it is, whatever you got to do. But that's kind of what it comes down to a lot of times, is just staying hungry, staying after it, staying active. And it can be hard. It can be. I
Yeah,
don't know. I don't know, you guys. Like y'all know how difficult it can be, right? Like I'm not
yeah.
just saying that.
Well, and look
Um,
at I feel for Darren, when he said about, and I've heard this a lot, and this is I'm blown away every time I hear about these kind of stories with GoFundMe that somebody else takes the money or they set it up for him, and it just that blows my mind, and I feel for you, Darren, and to have that that taken away when by somebody like that, it's just like oof, another little looking at community progress programs that I thought in your little city or state is the Boy Scouts of America. A lot of times, Eagle Scouts are looking for projects, and so when I had working for this organization called Wings, uh, every time we got a grant application for ramps for outdoors, I call it the Boy Scout of America, and they'd send out this Eagle Scouts ready to get their badge and build these awesome ramps
yeah.
that never fell apart. I was always impressed, man. I was just like, dang,
uh,
So instead of it coming out of our funding, we used to just call them, and they used to build these sweet ass ramps.
that's a good
Um,
idea. Using local resources. That's yeah.
yeah. I mean, that's you. A lot of times a lot of people would be very sympathetic to your situation, like they be more than willing to help, if like an individual's in need. The problem is just a lot of what we need, it requires sometimes in terms of equipment or modification, is these things are just exorbitantly expensive. The cost can be crazy. Home modification can be freaking wild when it comes to costs and modifying a bathroom and things like that. I know Triumph and stuff, like, and just speaking to Bobby and some of these guys that organize it, it's like getting the contractors, getting the quotes, having like people ready to go. I know Darren, you like mentioning you kind of live in a more rural area, and I mean maybe that's possibly making it difficult to find a contractor to come out. I just say maybe call around to even some that are a little bit further away and just explain your situation in detail, and you know um, hope that you can maybe find a sympathetic one to be willing to come out and give you a quote for the work or whatever it may be. And my dad just said in the chat, Nature Edge video there, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Shout out Papa, because that really is what it comes down to. Is they're not gonna know. The answer is always gonna be no unless you ask for it. Unless you're just like vocal about your situation and what you need. And tell you what, like it's just sometimes it comes down to voicing it to the right person, and that can figure it
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
Um,
That definitely it's always going to help. You never know until you start asking.
yeah.
Yep.
Now, I do want to comment a little bit on GoFundMe and just giving, other like fundraising websites. There's a lot out there. They can be trickier than a lot of people expect. There's certain laws, like federal laws surrounding fundraising, money, transferring money between people, especially if a third party is doing a fundraiser for an individual, they're not related to that person. It can be tricky giving money away tax wise and stuff. And there's a lot of nuances when it comes to these websites that a lot of people don't understand, and it's just usually in those terms and agreements that nobody ever reads. And it can just be really tricky. GoFundMe can be like a great source, a great resource when it comes to like raising money, having accessible merchant services that anybody could donate easily to. I really would just encourage anybody to, maybe talk to a nonprofit like Help Hope Live to navigate maybe some of the nuances and getting it set up, just because they will understand the intricacies, the rules, the laws, the stuff surrounding things like that. And again, like someone mentioned, difficulty raising money and getting awareness about your GoFundMe. It's really a trick into like beating the algorithm and getting your stuff visible, especially if you don't have a large social media presence yourself, or someone close to you that maybe can share it on a broader scale. But there are still ways to do it. Again, it's just understanding those nuances and like the tricks of the game are really hard. Google can be your friend, and there's a lot of resources online. But like I said, I really encourage you contacting something like Help Hope Live, because that's their job. That's what they, are there for, is to help explain these things to you. Um,
And
and
they
let's,
mainly do like medical fundraising or anything you personally need. So like they
yeah,
wouldn't help with like the car and different things like that. But it's a start for a lot of stuff. And
And
it's
that
non-taxable, so it won't mess with any of your tax stuff, like the GoFundMe, kind of like what Tom was talking about with transferring money and all that. But
and yeah, Renee asked if we ever reach out to like celebrities, athletes, or sponsors for fundraising. But we're
haven't.
always playing this sponsor game, and that's a reminder here. I need to shout out our sponsors here in 1 minute, but I'm going to finish my thought first. Just in that regard, it can be kind of like, you know, uh, you're hoping on a wing and a prayer that you get in touch with like a celebrity or an athlete that is sympathetic to your situation. It happens. There's all kinds of people that give all the time in that regard. But getting in touch, unless you really have an in, somebody that knows somebody that can, maybe talk to this person directly. You could always at them on social media if that's your thing. But the odds that, it's like a reliable way to, um, get someone, it can be very hard to reach out. You never know, if they're going to see your stuff or anything like that. We don't really rely on it. I mean, if some, cool celebrities, wealthy benefactors come across our stuff and, like think it's cool and want to support us, like all the better. But at the same time, we're not really like seeking out like any particular people of note
I feel like
other than just
there,
like individuals in the disabled community, but mostly for their personal experiences and knowledge and stuff to share, not like monetize us.
yeah, I feel like
Go
it's
ahead,
kind of
Sean.
hard to do online too because there's so many people that are contacting these people like celebrity and stuff. Like you just have to get lucky and like run into one somewhere.
Yeah,
A lot
true.
of times too,
And then plead your case, right?
it's
You got your
yeah
30
through a
seconds.
friend of a friend. When it comes to celebrity, it's like because your friend or knows someone, or you just it's a shot in the dark a lot of times when you think about those kind of help or that kind of help.
Well, we
Me
know
and
some
Tom are gonna start
celebrities.
reaching out to the workaholics guys. I just
Yeah,
really want to hang out with those
yo, shout
guys.
out. This is
I don't know
important.
how
It's a
much
cool
money they got,
podcast.
but hey.
They don't have podcast guests, but they'll be guests on ours maybe. So let me shout out our sponsors real quick, just since we're on that vein. We're very fortunate enough to have a couple really amazing sponsors that help support our channel so that we don't have to put any of our content behind a paywall, so that it can be available for free to anybody, anytime, anywhere. They help support, the equipment that we need, our travels and things that we do with Live to Rule. So first, let me shout out Mobility Professionals. They are a company out here in Southern California that specialize in rehabilitation equipment, wheelchairs, standing frames, the like. If you are in need and local to Southern California, really encourage you to give them a call, especially if you're starting out or if you're not starting out and just struggling with your current company. Maybe trying to get a new wheelchair, running into some obstacles. They are incredible in working with you, working with your insurance, understanding your needs, and getting you what you need in a timely manner. And that's pretty unheard of in today's rehab equipment game. And their sister company, Urology Professionals, similarly is a national company. So anywhere you are in the U.S., if you have urological supply needs, give them a call. If you are struggling with your current, medical supply company and getting regular supplies, because that's somehow an issue in the modern era of America in 2022. It shouldn't be, because even if you have like the most base level, insurance, you have right and access to catheters. Urology professionals will work with you, work with your insurance, help understand your situation, and most importantly, get you what you need in a timely manner. So yeah, if you're anywhere in the U.S., please give them a shout out. Let them know Live to Roll sent you, because they do a lot to support us, and they really are amazing companies that support the community in ways outside of just us. And yeah, they're
Yeah.
awesome. So check them out. We love you guys. Appreciate your support.
I
Yeah.
think
Uh,
Ryan, didn't you get a wheelchair from them?
Yeah, great. Yeah, the chair I'm sitting in right now is Mobility Professionals, and they
Nice.
were awesome. They were. I switched from a national brand to them, and it was phenomenal. So
yeah.
they took care of me. They're great.
See,
Roy, we
awesome.
appreciate you checking in, man. We love you. We all understand the busy nature of life and really appreciate you just taking whatever downtime you got to come and say hey. And Darren said he bought an Easy Stand and used it once, paid $1,500 for it. It's like exercise equipment clothes rack. I
I
got a
hear
question for
that
you.
happens to a lot of people,
I
unfortunately, Darren.
That's what everybody always asks me. They're like, "Hey, do you have a standing frame?" I'm like, "Oh, you mean a clothes rack?" No, I don't have one of those.
I
I
had
always,
one. Have you ever had one, Ryan?
Yeah, I use one like 4 times a week. So
Okay, awesome,
Then
dude.
you're
Good,
I'm
awesome,
getting mine
Ryan.
all the time.
you're the but
You're
good
Ryan,
for you, man.
you're incomplete a little bit. That helps with your spasms and helps with
100%.
keeping that tone going. And
Yeah,
Oh,
so
I think
for
on this chat, I'm on the way more incomplete scale than some of us, and so yeah,
Well,
if I'm not getting in that standing frame, man, I get so tight and so spasmy. It's intense.
it's also because you've like taken your rehab really seriously since I think the beginning of your injury. Like you haven't really skipped too much of a beat in terms of like staying active, exercising, moving your legs, getting up, bearing weight, working those muscles, stretching those tendons, doing those things you got to do. And I think that all helps kind of contribute in your ability to do more of that stuff, because your body's used to it. It gets accustomed to it, and it generally likes that activity and exercise too, whatever it may be. I'm curious, Darren, like what's your demotivating factor? It's like, is it hard to get into? I know, like, I used to have a standing frame when I lived at home with my family, and I got in it a couple times a week. And I'd get up and stand for an hour, and I'd read, do my homework, had a little table, sit there and do my thing. And it felt good. It felt like good on my body. When I moved into a 325 square foot studio in Southern California, it was not an option to have that and, still have meaningful space to navigate, what I got. So I had to give it up. And I don't use one regularly anymore. That was kind of my barring thing in that I also don't have care and I can't independently transfer to it and get in it myself. I would need someone to help me. I do have some care, but it's not for that, unfortunately. Um,
But that makes a little bit of a segue. Now, this isn't free money; it's not grants, but yes, out there things are expensive, and a way to do it is buying these, finding them used. It's funny if you really do your research and not do it once and then forget about it, but really look on eBay, look on some of those Facebook pages that sell the marketplace, and some of the other one. Definitely look into that, and you can find them for pretty cheap, and you can
there's a
actually
lot.
you can
There's a lot of
haggle.
people.
Wheelchair like I looked up wheelchairs the other day on eBay. You know, there's tons out there and tons that you can get for hand cycles, and you just never know. You just keep researching, and when you want something, like my first barbecue, that's how I did. I just kept researching until I found a really good bargain on a almost brand new barbecue.
Well, if you have like a local support group, like that can be amazing for resources. And just like, say what you're looking for. And, generally someone might either be like, hey, I got something like that, or I got something I don't use, maybe you could, or, just point you to some resources. A lot of people are in a situation, just like what Darren said, where it's like an expensive clothing rack taking up space in their house, which they'd, rather, have free for something else and are trying to move it for cheap and get it out of their space, or you sometimes even give it away. We're very again fortunate out here in Southern California to have a nonprofit like Triumph Foundation and a program like an equipment exchange where they post like stuff people are just trying to get rid of, and that just exactly like that. And again, I
So
wish there was programs like that everywhere, but again, Google's your friend when it comes to finding stuff like that.
uh, so Rob said he got it 7 times cheaper than on eBay, than
Yeah,
what the market price would have been. So that's awesome. Great way to go. And so Rob is now driving. He's got hand controls. So
yeah.
let us know when you're on the road so we can get off the road, buddy. And
Just getting back from San
okay,
Diego. Hope
yeah,
you don't mind me
keep
saying
driving.
that. Stu Rob's a really good friend and good friend of the show too. So shout out Air Wings. Um,
And to answer Roy's question, not this Thursday, next Thursday is the old Geezer group. So I kind of like that name. Maybe we might have to change it to the Geezer group. But no, we're rolling over the hill is starting next Tuesday on the 27th of
it's
October.
gonna be really
Yeah.
great. So make sure to be excited for that. Let's call out what's up, kicking it with Rob and Tara. You guys are kicking it with Live to Roll. We appreciate you guys joining.
Thanks for
Yeah.
joining.
And Dominic, appreciate you, man. I'm glad you're finding the info useful, and glad you enjoy listening to us. We try to make it meaningful in terms of our info and be a little entertaining along the way.
So
But
Bob,
in that vein, um, did we have any other avenues of grants funding that we want to touch on? Ryan, anything that you wanted to add? Anything you've taken advantage of in the past that we haven't touched on?
Yeah, I think one thing Bobby mentioned that I wanted to circle back to is the easiest way to get filtered out of the pool money is to not follow directions. So
Yeah,
to miss deadlines, to not fill out parts
yeah,
of the application, to not put in the time and effort that they're going to put into to review all these applications that they're going to get. And that's the easiest way to have to apply again and try again next year because that's the easiest filtering tool is didn't follow directions. And
yep.
and I, I
Uh,
I mean that not to sound harsh, but it really is like if they're asking for something, letters of reference, quotes, anything like that, if you're skipping over categories and it's not worth your time, it's not worth their time.
Yeah.
So it's important to free money sounds a lot like work, and
Yeah.
that's because it is.
Yeah.
And that's so right. And I'll tell you, when in the corner over here with my hand cycle, and I was going through the Kelly Brush Foundation, and when I got to that squeaky part that I'm like, oh, I'm going to get denied here, that was turning in how much I make. And when I have a job and I had Social Security coming in, and then I also my wife's income and my house, and I'm like, yeah, and I got some money in the bank, and this ain't gonna look good, but I'll put it. I'm gonna put it there. But I'm also
Yeah.
gonna explain other things like why I'm really looking forward to doing this, why $8,000 would really put a little damper on my my funding, because I do have a house, and we do rely a little bit more on my wife's income and stuff like that. And sure enough, I found out, boom, got it. I was honest, and I was really thorough about everything I turned in. And I think I was just really honest, and I would hate to not be honest about it, but it didn't hinder from me getting approved for that. And one thing is, make sure you hit those deadlines. The day after, and you call and you're like, oh, I have almost everything. They're gonna be like, no. And if they do say, okay, bring it in, most likely it's going to come in. It's going to go, well, he did it, but here, put it to the side.
Well, very
If we have,
often they get so many applications, they start reviewing them as soon as they start to come in. Like the ones that are like hotcakes, first ones in, like they're the fresh eyes, they're the ones like reading like, oh, this guy, this is cool. This, it's good justification, good reasoning, let's like maybe take care of him. But it's always better than getting it in like, an hour before the deadline's about to close, or, like just not even getting in at all. I'm not saying this to just like throw shade at anybody, because I can be, a chronic procrastinator at times. And, I've been, just personal things like missed deadlines, failed to complete them in a meaningful way, or missed parts because I was just trying to do it quick before, the deadline, ended, and get it in, and, made my application not one of the ones that, ended up being considered because I was rushed, Um, that comes down to the individual. Motivate yourself. Set your to-do list. I promise, you won't regret having done it sooner and getting it in. But the regret comes when you miss it. You're like, damn, why didn't I do that? Um,
And that's what I think. Speaking of
yeah,
just deadlines, if you're looking for some sports equipment, the CAF deadline grant I think is at the end of the month. So I think there's only a couple weeks left if you are looking for a Challenge Athletes Foundation CAF grant for any sports equipment. So get on the website and get your applications in.
and that's one where you really do have to wait a long time for an answer.
yeah,
So it can be a little bit frustrating when you're like, going on 6 months, 8 months before you hear anything.
That sucks.
yeah,
And especially if the word is no, after you're like, really? I could have applied for another, but what I would also do is apply for a few. If
but
you do get approved, let's say you apply for Challenge Athletes, and then you apply for Kelly Brush, and then Challenge Athletes accept it, and then all of a sudden Kelly Brush is like, hey, you're approved. It's awesome to say, one is to say, I already got the funding, or two, great, that's going to help cover the additional. And a lot of
yeah.
those grants cross over. I had to get 2 grants for the hand cycle behind me. So that definitely helped, by having 2 grants and submitting 2 grants for that.
And that's where
And then,
like the throwing paint on a canvas, you just gotta hit them, right, Ryan? I'm gonna let you talk.
yeah, and then another point I just want to explain is so those processes go that you apply to the grant, and then the grant money is going directly to the vendor. It's not going into you. It's not
Yeah,
coming to you.
No,
So that's an
not
important element to understand, is that when you're going out and getting these quotes, like those are the vendors you're going to be working with too. It's not
yeah,
some, let me call the 1-800 hotline. Um, I don't know. I think that's an important element to understand too, is that it's like getting a scholarship to a school. You're not just getting rogue money. It's like,
Yeah.
I want to go to college and I'm going to this college and this is where it's going, and it's not going in your back pocket.
And especially for things like vehicle modifications, home modifications, stuff like that. That's why they want you to come with quotes and like contractors and people like who like have already say this is what it's going to cost because the money's not going to be going to you then to them or so you can like shop around and maybe find someone cheaper. It's just going to go to the person doing the job and getting it done. But that's how it's meant to be, and it's just to ensure nobody's taking advantage because it is unfortunate that the reason fundraising can be very difficult, the reason GoFundMe and other websites do have stringent rules and weird laws and all this stuff surrounding it is because people take advantage. And it's super unfortunate that that's the case because there are honest individuals that, are in honest need. But it's the rules of the game. We all got to follow in order to ensure that the system isn't taken advantage or played. Because, that's not cool. It's not cool to not be honest.
And
So
we also talked a lot about sports equipment and about the other things, but one thing, and we briefly touched on it, but with schools, there's a lot of school scholarships out there, that are not necessarily grants, they're more scholarships, but scholarships are huge out there, and there's one here in Southern California, and anybody can apply for it anywhere, and and that's the USC, the Trojans. They have a Swim with Mike scholarship, and it is meant, and I don't think it's just more, even if you were in just T-ball, I think you still qualify. So like you play T-ball for like 4 years or 2 years, I think you still even qualify for this scholarship with the Swim with Mike. So Swim with Mike is a huge scholarship, and I've had so many friends go through it and get a full ride to USC.
And if we're talking about education, like money, for purposes of like scholarly pursuit, it's a little different than grants. I think scholarships, maybe fall under a different umbrella in that like it is a very abundant for education. I, personally took advantage of a lot of scholarships and, like money that was available for me. And, there's work that comes associated with that, but we could honestly do a whole episode talking about, like education funding and, vocational training, scholarships and funding like that. Again, similar bubble might be another smaller bubble inside the big bubble, but we could spend a whole lot of time talking about it. It is something I say is in a little bit of a different category too, because if you're doing it in pursuit of education, I feel like it's a little bit easier to get money in that regard because there's a lot of it available and not enough people applying for it out there. And some really cool programs that are hugely helpful and like can help you out in very significant ways when it comes to just getting back to work and getting your education. We
But
have someone.
it falls on the category. Do your work out there and do your research to find these, these great things that are offered just because you have a disability.
And incomplete versus complete. As someone who just was re-diagnosed after 25 years, I've been C5-6 quadriplegic my whole life. That's just what I said. And then I went to a physiatrist. He's like, "What's this 5-6 nonsense?" He's like, "What's your actual like inks test? Like, what's your Asia level? Like, what?" So I got reassessed, and that's why I'm C6 incomplete, because that's my area. And the incomplete nature is I have sensation or function below my level of injury. Now, for me, my incompleteness only affects my sensation. I have bladder and bowel sensation. I don't have bladder and bowel function, but like I can feel when I gotta go to the bathroom. I just don't really have any control over it. That's why I still have to do a bowel routine. I still have to cath. But because I have sensation,
isn't that more or less an autonomic response in your body? Like, isn't that AD that you're just feeling and like you've grown to understand?
No, they do.
Because I don't feel like it's true sensation. I feel like
they do. They do a test, and I talked to my doctor.
Okay.
And this sounds funny. Stick a finger in your butt. If you have sensation in your rectum, that's like the tell, and they will like do that test. They'll do like dig stim. If you can like accurately like identify when they're doing the dig stim, that was because that wasn't triggering AD. It was like just the muscle and the vagal nerve, and whatever undamaged nerves that are still sending signals that I'm paying attention. It's why I can feel like if I'm having an accident, like I know I'm having an accident, like in that moment, because my body's giving me some sensation. I just again don't have any control over that. Now, Ryan, you're incomplete too, correct?
Correct. Yes.
But
Yeah.
you are functionally incomplete in that. Can you move any muscles or anything below your level?
Yeah. So I it's more like parlor tricks,
Yeah,
because it's functionally it doesn't help me, but yeah, I can all the way down to like my toes. I can wiggle my toes a little bit, but can do they have strength to them? No.
yeah,
But that nerve or that motor function's getting all the way down there, and so bigger muscle groups don't really do much because it takes more activation energy, right, to make those guys move. But the tiny guys, like fingers and toes, do little weird things that they shouldn't.
yeah.
So I'm very lucky in that sense. It's always trying to capitalize on that to make it more functional. But yeah, so it's a lot of that stuff. It's weird. And then on the flip side of that is that with that incompleteness, I know exactly where that C4 line is for me because it's pretty drastic. It's like
Yeah,
here at the top of my shoulders is where normal function and sensation stops, and then everything else turns into like the TV screen. You know what I mean? The
yeah.
fuzzy. Bzz.
And just because a person's incomplete or complete, it isn't a comment on their level of function. Just because like Ryan's a C4 incomplete, like he, doesn't mean he's like necessarily even more functional than other C4s. There might be other C4s that are more functional than him, that might be, a little bit more incomplete and have a little bit more muscle function or something. It's not meant to discriminate, like divide us, or like, oh, I'm incomplete versus complete or anything like that. Every spinal cord injury is different. Everyone's like a fingerprint. The ones that are usually more in the same boat is like if you do sever your spinal cord completely, that is a complete injury.
But I
Like
think that's
that.
like super rare, though. Isn't
That's
that like
again
super
super
rare?
super rare.
Like it like never
There
happens.
are spinal cord injuries that like are crushed and all the nerves are completely damaged, and that when they do the test, yeah, all right. So Bobby, perfect example. Do you maybe want to talk on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, mine was crushed. My C6 is pretty much crushed into my spinal cord.
Yeah,
Where if on the MRI, it shows like this whole thing is right into the spinal cord, and this bone is also, and they're just touching each other. It wasn't severed, but it's crushed to a point where they didn't even want to go in there and do surgery and do a plate or what's that surgery called where they're going in there and fusing it. So
yeah,
they didn't even want to do that. They thought that they would get really a lot worse than what they it turned out to be. So I'm glad they didn't touch it. But now like just sitting here, like sometimes on my computer, it was happening today. Why I was moving so much, I do have a lot of spinal stenosis from it, where my arm starts to get numb if I'm just in a weird
I get
spot.
that.
So it's pretty messed up back there, but I'm just too scared to go in there and have it taken care of because it's that C6. Just
yeah,
every doctor that looks at it on the MRI is just like, holy crap, man, what is
yeah,
going on? And so yeah, it's. I mean, when I was younger, I just took that as I had it severed, but it's not. After I uh, had it all analyzed and but 33 years, I'm old school. I'm always going to be C5-6. No one's ever going to tell me not. No one's ever going to call me a tetra. Are you a tetra or do you say quadriplegic, Ryan?
I say quad. They did teach me tetraplegic, but it's kind of hard when the rest of the world says quad.
well, that's old
Okay.
school. It's like that wasn't a word 20 years
No,
ago.
no,
Like they didn't
no
call it
way am
tetra.
I
Yeah,
ever
they
using tetras.
Yeah.
yeah now
But
everything is more tetra because it's incomplete injury and you have
and
whatever. But
again, like quad, para, we are all a part of the spinal cord injury
Yeah.
community. One of our favorite guests we have on, Lewis, he has a spinal cord injury, but he can ambulate and walk, like to a certain degree and stuff with a cane and certain AFOs and assistance and stuff like that. So, every injury is different. We all generally deal with a lot of the same stuff. There's a lot of crossover, some in more significant ways than others. Like Ryan has a little bit higher level injury than me. C4, I'm a C6. We're both incomplete, but he's probably independent in ways that I'm not independent, and I'm maybe more functional, independent in ways that he's not. Because that's just kind of how the cookie crumbled, in terms of our injury. Like Shawn and Bobby are very similar, yet they kind of both have the things they might do a little bit better than the other one. Not because like they're more functional or like a better quad or anything. It's just because that's how we learned. It's how our injury affected us. It's how we learned to utilize our particular like musculature, skeletal muscular structure, and our transfers and our independent tasks. It's all very nuanced. So,
Well,
quad, para, in between, like it doesn't really matter. Like we're all in this together. We're all, dealing with a lot of the, same things, and we're all just kind of working to support one another, in this struggle of like overcoming the obstacles that all of us kind of generally face,
I
navigating
mean,
mobility or health issues.
and that can be a huge separate show, Darren. I mean, definitely. I don't think personally. I'm not. It's not very sensitive to me, and I don't think for most
Yeah.
ones I know that have maybe a little bit tougher times are the ones that are really incomplete, that are walking, you wouldn't even know it. But man, I've had a few come into my support groups, and they're miserable. They're miserable
Yeah.
because they don't get recognized as someone with a spinal cord injury. They're miserable because everyone's like, "What are you complaining about?" Because you walk. But they're miserable because they have so much nerve pain. They can't hold their bowel and bladder, and they don't get associated with someone like sitting down in a chair, which is really hard for them. And
Yeah.
so now they're in this no man land. And then you got the central cords. I mean, we could have a huge show. I mean, I would never want to be a central cord, where your arms do not work at all, but your legs are like, hey, let's go walking. But you're like, nope, can't do it. So it's got to be so
That's it.
frustrating. If anybody's central cord out there, shout out, man.
I actually
You
know I have a friend that I met from doing the water skiing at USARK. He lives up in Big Bear. He's a local up there and does the water skiing on the lake. And I've skied with him a few times. Can't move his arms at all, but he walks around fine. He has no wheelchair, but his arms, hands are completely clenched into fists, arms down to his side, and because of that ability of function, like I actually can do a little better on the ski because I have that little bit of mobility with my arms. I can hold the ski,
your
whereas
neck.
he's, yeah, my neck and stuff. Where he's like stuck up here and like kind of able to move his hips and stuff. But yeah, totally. Spinal cords are crazy.
And they are. And you're gonna see crazier injuries more common nowadays too because of the ability to treat people during their major trauma period. They have, really amazing steroids and really cool methods of cooling your body down and stopping inflammation and stopping the damage being done, to all of your nerves. Instead they can curb it and stop it if they can get to it in time. And there's just really amazing treatment out there in terms of like medical advancement when it comes to like treating trauma early on in spinal cord injuries. So you're very often seeing people come out of hospital and rehab with more of an incomplete injury because of those things. Darren, you said in the comments like any feeling is better than no feeling. I used to kind of think that's true until like met some parents with like all they're feeling in their legs is just like extreme neuropathy, and like all they do is like wish that like they don't necessarily have the feeling for function or anything like that. They just kind of feel the pain and the burn
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And it can just really be tricky. I try not to judge anybody's situation, and especially like give credit to their situation too, because I have met a few of those individuals that maybe feel like they have more of an invisible disability and aren't as recognized, which sucks and shouldn't be the case because we all need help. We all got to understand our conditions, and everybody has a right to that, whether or not they're more functional or not. That should not be like a way that determines one's need for knowledge and assistance and understanding.
Yeah.
Um,
Amen.
and yeah, no worries about sidetracking us, Darren. This is all really great conversation, which I feel like is very relatable to a lot of people out there. And we're kind of getting ready to wrap up anyways. So, we appreciate the little segue to, end the pod on this cool note. Because, like Bobby said, we could have a whole show about it. It's a really common topic in question. A lot of people, talk about. And yeah, I feel you. My legs don't hurt 24/7, but my hands, wrists, shoulders, neck, and back do. And
Yeah.
we all manage the best we can, and I hope you do have some resources for managing that because it can be really tough. And if you don't, maybe check out our episodes on pain management because we got a couple really awesome episodes where we go really in deep in talking about managing this kind of stuff. But Ryan, thank you,
And
man. We really appreciate you taking the time today to join us, share your experiences and knowledge. Like it's always my favorite part of the pod. It's just like kind of the human stories that come along with our guests and stuff because they're all so awesome and cool and inspiring, at least to me, and I'm sure to many
But
others out there.
glad to be here. Glad to be part of it.
Heck yeah, man.
yeah,
And I
Ryan,
want to
man,
get out
thanks for
sailing with you, bro. I need you to teach me some of these
Ryan
sailor
goes,
knots, man.
Ryan goes, is this by phone call? I'm like, no, we're on video. He goes, I got to comb my hair and brush my teeth.
Get the boogers out of my nose.
Hey, I
uh,
feel the same way. I'm like dashing to, make sure I
Come in
look
that
You're,
right.
nose.
you're looking good, Ryan. You're good, bro. And I'm gonna I never throw these up here, but like, I'm just gonna shout out before we end that just a
do some
reminder, you Live to Roll is best of YouTubers with paralysis and Paralysis Podcast 2022. Only one that
According
was
to
on both of those
spinalcord
lists.
It's according to spinalcord.org at least, right? It's .org, not .com.
No,
.com.
.com.
No, it is
Oh,
.com.
.com. Sorry about that,
Actually,
you guys.
and for this, what we were talking about today, I'm staring at it right now through spinalcord.com is a lot of these grants that you can look up that we were talking about, and some that I didn't even know, and I thought I've heard them all, and that's what's great when you start doing your research out there. I'm like, man, what can I get out here, But
Yeah.
but that's a great resource, so check it out. And a little cliffhanger
check it.
for our next meeting. I'm pretty sure we're doing it on stem cell because you brought it up, Tom. So
Yeah.
we're
Be
gonna do
excited
a
for that
little
one.
segment.
It's going to be a fun one.
Yeah. So
And
that's a whole nother can of worms when we talk about stem cell. And I'm definitely not an expert when it comes to when you first get
man.
hurt, and there's so much out there for stem cell and where to go. But I had a little bit of a different experience with stem cell, so I'll be talking about that. Tom has a lot of information, and
Yeah, we're going to be talking about Bobby's experience with like his wound and like his current stem cell treatment that is available. And then we're going to be talking about stem cell treatment in general, kind of more in the vein of like what a lot of people think in terms of like treating spinal cord injury. The progress been made in that. We're going to be talking about Dr. Wise Young's research, what they've done over in China, what they're doing over in China, and the studies they're doing here in the States too, and what might be coming out in the next couple of years. It's kind of always the divisive, like weird topic, especially like we don't like to, preach like, cures and things like that, but it is exciting in terms of
And it's more
healing
than
and
just
regaining
the spinal
function,
cord.
and it's not
Yeah.
just people getting up and walking. It's pretty exciting, fun stuff that I've heard about my whole life, and now it's kind of starting to come to fruition in certain ways, and so we're excited to
No.
talk about that. So make sure to join us next Tuesday at 3:30. Y'all know
And
what
I'm
time
gonna
it
do
is.
one last local shout out for our friends here in SoCal. Adaptive Sports Festival from Triumph in a couple of weeks.
sir.
Live to Roll will be there with a booth. I'll be playing rugby. We'll all be hanging out. Come out. It's totally free. Lunch is provided. So if you're in Southern California, check that out.
Awesome.
TriumphFoundation.org.
Right there on Facebook.
We got people that come from, all over California and nearby states and stuff that travel for it. It might sound a little crazy, but it's totally worth, making the day trip, maybe making a little overnight trip out of it, if it means you can come and attend because it's amazing. It's so many opportunities to try out a lot of cool, different adaptive recreation activities and
All
just
different
like
stuff.
meet so many people. Like I can't say.
And
like,
there's arts and
enough good
crafts and
things.
stuff like that too. If you're not so,
It's not all
sports
just athletic.
athletic.
A lot of resources. We'll be there.
Well,
There's even going to be
roll.
scuba diving. So if you want to get in the pool and you learn scuba, everything will be there.
I've done it before. It changed my life.
So
You know,
yeah,
it's funny.
let's,
About 4 years ago, we had somebody fly from, I think, Washington or Utah. I can't remember. He flew out just to be at our sports camp. We do also have a sports camp up in Santa Clarita. It's a 2-day one, and he came out for that. And then a year later, he moved out. He's like, "You guys were so awesome. I just had to be around you because I was in too small of an area." And so he moved out. And in fact, at one of the sports camps where I met Ryan after he was fresh meat out of rehab, and he was like, "I can't do anything." I'm like, "Bull crap, you can do it."
You're gonna be sailing soon, bro.
No, he really wanted to get better himself and get some exercise. And I said, "Well, then you're coming out with me to the beach." And so Ryan and I have a history of pushing the beach and lots of good conversations. And now I have a good friend. So.
And it's never too late to get
that's
involved in
awesome.
this kind of stuff. I didn't go to my first adaptive rec event until 16 years after my injury. So it's never too late. Trust me. Make sure to keep an eye out for cool things like that. Really motivate yourself to go and try to take advantage, even if it's just once to see, feel it out. Because I promise it can change your life in a positive way.
Yep.
Shout
All
out
right,
to
guys.
Ben. He gave us a $3 super sticker. Thanks a lot, Ben. And also, he's right. Don't forget the
Oh, his
smash.
birthday's happy birthday, Ben. Your birthday's tomorrow. Oh, man.
And he's
we got
leaving for a
the
road
number
trip
right
when this street's over. You driving out to Cali, bro? Because if not,
Well,
change your direction.
happy birthday, Ben.
I just kidding. But I really hope it's
Uh,
amazing, dude. And happiest of birthdays to you, bro.
Happy birthday, Darren, too, on the 20th.
He's coming
Awesome,
up, I think,
guys.
when's that, Sunday?
And
All these October birthdays, dude. That's awesome. I like it, man.
yeah, we'll be back next week, like we said, with the stem cells, talking about some interesting stuff. And Brianna will be on in a couple days here with the
Yep.
women's show and doing it with the regular girls, the twins, and Maya and Jessica. So check that out Thursday, you guys.
We're going to be running it back after some technical difficulties. Sorry about that missed episode, everybody. But hey, we're doing our best. And sometimes the universe, conspires against us. And that's all
Yeah,
right. It's okay to
You pay
take a
for
break
what
every
you
once
get.
in a
You
while.
pay for what you get.
That's it, exactly.
But awesome,
All
you guys.
right.
Thank you for watching. We appreciate you. And we'll see
Hit
you
that
next
like
time.
button,
Live to roll,
subscribe if
everybody.
you haven't. Peace out,
And happy
everybody.
birthday again, guys. Ben, Darren. Later,
Yep,
guys.
happy birthday.